Hey, Lake listeners. Thank you for coming back for more of Season 2 with the Grow, Thrive, Inspire podcast. We are excited to be here with our broker owners again, Jeff Krantz and Jason Whittle, bringing you one last Java tip of this season. So guys, thank you so much for being here again. The caffeine is flowing, and I know I am pumped for this tip today.
We're going to need the caffeine flowing. We got a lot of stuff to talk about in a short period of time.
Do.
This is a good one. This is a good one. I'm excited about this.
Yeah, there's lots of good nuggets in here, Caitlin. It's good to be back with you on Grow, Thrive, Inspire. It's been a fun year.
All right, this is gonna be action packed.
Action packed. So here we go. I wanted to do today's Java tip on getting to the finish line. So from contract to sold, and maybe some tips, suggestion, or advice for our clients on like maybe they're in this situation or thinking about getting into this situation. So let's kick it off. I'm a client of yours, and we are selling my home. Walk me through.
Well, it's such a good topic, Kaylin, because I hear it all the time. I sold my home, and I'm like, oh, congrats. And come to find out, it's really just under contract. That is exciting to get a home under contract, but that's only part of the process. We see you've got to make sure that the rest of the process it goes as smoothly as the first part. So we're going to kind of walk everybody through kind of that whole thing. And Jeff's really good at it, so I'm going to let him start with it.
Set me up. So prior to even signing the listing, it's really important for your agent to talk through some expectations. So we want to be aware of what could happen, what might happen. We want to anticipate, in today's market, we want to anticipate the possibility of multiple offers. So we really want to take our pricing into consideration. Sometimes, everybody wants to get the very most, but in order to get the very most, the most important part is to be realistic on the pricing. A realistically priced home right now will cause a lot of excitement. A lot of excitement means the potential for multiple offers. Multiple offers mean the ability to get the most that you can for your home. So it's really important to visit a lot about that. Take your time. It's in my opinion, it's also important to have the home ready by the time you pull the trigger. So you there may be a week or maybe probably a week in preparation prior to ever hitting the market, because it's important to have your pictures and your tours and your verbiage and everything laid out and in place. You want to do the best job that you can on your disclosures. When your agent asks you to disclose everything that you know about a home, be very thorough. It's very important to give the buyer all that information. The buyer's going to probably 100% of the time just anticipate the buyer getting an inspection. Jason, you want to take off from there for a while?
Inspections are a big one. You want to make sure that you're setting expectations with your buyers and your sellers, because it's important to understand you don't want buyers getting scared away if you're representing a buyer. Because on those inspectors get paid to find, I don't care if your home is brand new, they're going to find something. And if it's older than 4 or 5 years, they're going to find pages. Inspectors feel like they're in an impossible position, so they are finding everything they can. And just because you've got pages of notes of things that need to be fixed, most of those things are small things. But if you're not setting the right expectations, sometimes people can get scared. They can get thinking that, the property's in disarray, when really it's just not been, maybe some of the things have not been kept up. So it goes back to managing expectations on both sides, understanding that especially in our market today where sellers do have so much control, sometimes the negotiation process on during the contract phase, sometimes the buyers are feeling like they're getting beat up, and so then when it comes to inspections, we feel like sometimes deals fall out during inspections because the sellers still feel like they have control. They're not maybe willing to do anything, and the buyers have already felt like they've given, and then so they're just done.
Right.
And so setting those expectations, walking through that, making sure that we have got the proper things in place, and that we're handling those negotiations, because at the end of the day, it's another negotiation. We're handling those negotiations properly Because at the end of the day, we want to get it to the finish line.
Right.
We know the buyer wants the property, and we know the seller wants to sell their property. Sometimes we just lose sight of that. So.
I'm so glad you said that. It's really important. That's probably where we see one of the most, one of the highest percentage of fallouts that shouldn't have happened because of the inspection process and the renegotiation that occurs. The other sensitive issue that needs to be talked about for buyers and sellers: what happens when the home is appraised?
I'm glad you brought that up.
Appraisers have a impossible task on some of these properties because they're looking in arrears. An appraiser is I don't know the word. They have to look at sold comps in the past, and they have specific criteria. There you go, around the comps that they pull. Sometimes there aren't comps available today. And sometimes when there are comps available, it has not caught up with the market. They're looking 6 months in the past. They can't can't keep up with the market.
They've always had an impossible job in our market. There's just there are a lot of properties that just there aren't comps.
Right.
In our market here, you may have a trailer sitting next to $1 million property, or you may have two of the exact same homes sitting next to each other, and one may be worth 40% less than the other. And you're like, well, how can that? They're identical. Well, maybe it's water depth, maybe it's topography of the driveway, maybe it's parking. There's lots of different things. So these guys have an impossible job. And being able to manage that, being able to set those expectations before it happens, the buyer, we know this is the property that we want. We've looked at all the other ones out there, and we know that this is properly priced. We know that we're buying it where we want to, and so at some level we've got to make decisions. And not everybody's in the same place financially to be able to do that. But you got to know what your situation is going into it, and you've got to understand it. And the more you talk about it with buyers and sellers, the more smoothly the transaction
I love
will
that
go.
point.
Yeah, sellers have to be aware of that as well. And being aware allows you to negotiate properly on either side. To anticipate your needs, we oftentimes tell our sellers, we don't want you to move a fork until we get through contingencies. If you're living full time in a home, that's something to take into consideration. And then we also want you just to have an idea of what inspectors and appraisers are going to deal with, so that you can anticipate that and know what's happening on the other end of the transaction.
One thing that will sometimes help in that is making sure that you get an appraiser that's local, and the way that you usually do that is by using a local lender.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes we see
Very good point.
Lenders who are good lenders, but they're outside of this market. They're not used to dealing with this market. In this market, there's boat docks, there's boat slips as it deals with condos, there's condo. There's different, the way that their bylaws are written, they really mess with some of the Fannie Freddie guidelines. And so we've got some local lenders that know how to work around that. Their underwriters they do it all the time.
It happens innocently.
Right.
The buyers come in from other areas. They have great relationships with their lenders at home. The lenders at home want to do a good job for the buyers because they have a relationship. Inadvertently, sometimes they get into deals that, like Jason was saying, they don't know the specifics of the market, and then when that comes up, it's late.
Yeah, real late.
It's late in that process, and it's not a good surprise. And so that's a really good piece of advice. Consider a local lender.
I love it. Okay, so I'm still the seller. What is some of this paperwork like? What would I expect, or maybe something I wouldn't expect out of the paperwork that I have to deal with? If I run into something that maybe is not expected, how might I overcome that also?
Well, you talk about paperwork. It makes me think of one thing: everything in writing. So, when you get into a fast-paced situation, we deal with a lot of verbal offers, and there is no verbal offer.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
We want to make sure to condition buyers and sellers to be prepared to put everything in writing. Oftentimes people are here for just a couple days, and it seems to be moving quickly, and that helps us avoid issues. But lots of paperwork. There's lots of paperwork to consider when you're working through a real estate transaction. Again, disclosures are really good. These days, there's some paperwork that will come with your contract that is just sets the correct expectation. For instance, we have forms around the seller's need to provide all inspections, all surveys, all dock permits, all electrical inspections on docks, things like that are pretty specific to our area, which need to be supplied to a buyer so that the buyer can do all of their homework ahead of time. Everything that your agent is doing to try to avoid surprises later down the road.
Yeah, sometimes it can feel like a pain, all the paperwork, and I get it. I hate paperwork, but at the end of the day, your agent isn't trying to bug you to death. The reality is that they're doing that for specific reasons, and most of it's for liability reasons and to make sure that the process goes smooth. We see lots of deals get held up at the 12th hour because some of that paperwork that allows you to transfer dock permits is not done. Ameren has changed a lot of their guidelines over the last few years, which is good. It's all for public safety. It's all for public good. So I'm glad they made some of those changes, but it does make for some challenges as far as timing wise. And so making sure that you get that paperwork done quicker the better. Mm-hmm. It'll just avoid hiccups later down the road.
And you hear people say things about it being a seller's market. And what we want to do is just set a realistic expectation. So you take the time in the beginning to put it together correctly. And then you have an understanding that my negotiation isn't over. I may have to be a part of helping or doing some negotiating during the inspection notice. Maybe that includes going out and researching roof damage, septic issues,
dock modification. Maybe your buyer needs a bigger dock. So.
Just the expectation that you're not done day one is a good thing. On the buy side, today's lending process, although lenders are very willing to give money today, they want to lend money. Interest rates are great. Don't be overwhelmed. They're going to ask you for a lot of information. Be prepared for that. Be ready. Embrace that with open arms. The faster you get it to them, the faster they can provide a solid
commitment. They are not trying to single you out. It is like that for all of us. Everybody. So the good old days of the handshake are gone.
So what are my responsibilities as a seller during this time? Is there anything else I should consider or be aware of ahead of time?
Well, I think we already touched on most of it.
We did. The only thing I would add is it's a relationship. Mm-hmm. So when you're a seller and you're out there and you're feeling things like, I wonder what my agent's doing for me, mm-hmm. pick up the phone and call them. Don't just wait for them to call you. Pick up the phone and call them. They are doing something, but I know there's a disconnect sometime between the time that we list the property as sellers and the real understanding of what's going on the other side of the door.
Oh, wow.
So remember, it's a relationship, and it goes both ways.
Yeah, and agents, you guys got to remember that. It's still the number one complaint with NAR is that we don't do a good job communicating. And I say we, I mean, as an industry as a whole, we want to make sure that Lake of the Ozarks agents are different. We want to communicate. And it's so important right now. Things are happening fast. Things are moving fast. You've got to communicate often and quickly.
Oh, that's to buyers too.
Yep.
That one doesn't miss the buyers.
Nope.
The buyers get excited and they come down here, and then they expect to see a bunch of property in their inbox to look at. And when they don't see it and their agent doesn't call them, they start thinking, well, that agent's not doing their job. The agent, on the other hand, is thinking, well, I don't have the perfect place to show them yet, so I don't have anything to send them. Make sure, we talk to our agents a lot about this. Make sure that you're communicating between the buyer, with the buyer. Let them know, hey, there's nothing on the market today, but there's likely to be something tomorrow. I'm here working.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's flip the script now. So I'm a buyer now, and we just found the house, okay? So walk me through this. Did we look at a ton of properties first? Like, what did we do first?
So we've looked at hundreds, if not thousands, of property. Probably not as many in today's market as we did 2 years ago. But remember, with today's technology, we're able to look at homes so much easier and better online. And in our market, we get lots of people who buy homes sight unseen. We do walkthroughs, we do video walkthroughs, we do FaceTime walkthroughs. So in our market, it's not uncommon for somebody to buy a home without ever stepping foot in the door. So
happens every day.
It
Love
really
it.
does.
Mm-hmm.
It really does. Go ahead.
No, I just get excited because I believe it's the agent's job to help a buyer make a decision. It's the buyer's responsibility to be ready, willing, and able. And what I mean by that is, like Jason said, we're constantly doing. When you're buying, you're looking, you're excited, you're looking on the internet, you're doing your own investigation. That's part of the whole fun of it. But you got to put your ducks in a row, because winning today means acting on that property quickly. It means understanding that the most important part when you find the right property is getting a contract submitted and making it the best that you can. Do you agree with that?
And in person, you may only look at 2 or 3 homes. You may only look at one, or you may look at 10 or 15 homes. But the key is that when you find that one, you better be ready to pull the trigger, because if you wait to go see the rest of the day, that one that you're excited about may have a contract on it that afternoon, and that's just it is the nature of the beast we're in right now.
The other thing with my buyers and this goes for agents too. Keep a healthy mindset. So you come down to look at property, you look at a couple and they sell, and you don't get them. It's okay. It's really okay. It's not anything that doesn't happen to lots and lots of others. The agent should stay upbeat. The buyer should stay upbeat. Other things come on the market at all times. So what that's going to do is that's going to build the relationship between you and your agent. The agent's going to be looking constantly when the next one comes. You're ready.
But Jeff, I've lost on 2 or 3 homes, and now I'm so disappointed. Go through the process. Explain to us the process that you use when you're in a multiple offer. Maybe you've lost a couple homes. What do you tell your buyer to tell me what to offer, Jeff? I want to know what to offer. Tell me what to offer.
Yeah, Jason, here's what you need to offer. Here's what I don't want to happen. I don't want you to come back to me after we submit this offer, when that seller is looking at all the offers that they have to look at. I don't want you to come back to me when we lose and say, I wish you would have told me, I would have paid more. So, that's what we tell our buyers today, because that's the truth. Sometimes, it's a very small difference. And our advice is to put your very best foot forward, your very best foot with respect to price and other things. Jason, hit the other things they need to think about.
Well, the other things, a lot of times people forget about that. It's earnest money. It's your time frames. It's your, are you making it contingent on appraisal? Are you making it contingent upon financing? We have lots of people in this market that don't necessarily need to have financing. If you don't need to have financing, I would highly recommend taking that off. Those multiple offer ones, cash is king. I know we can't always do cash, but if you can, that's a big one. So taking off as many contingencies as you feel comfortable with. I'm not telling you I'm not saying don't get inspections. I'm not saying don't get financing. What I'm saying is make the contracts as clean as you feel comfortable with, and do as much homework as you can.
Jason, what if I say this? Agents don't talk buyers out of buying. What does that mean?
Yeah. So we call it buyer-itis, And it all comes from a good place. It comes from a great place. It's their buyer. They want to make sure that they're getting them a good deal, and we do. We want to make sure that we're getting every one of our buyers a good deal. But in a market like today, it's hard to know what a good deal is. The right property on the market that you get is a good deal. Not everybody is looking for a steal. Sometimes people want the property that they want. And so make sure that you're listening to your agents. Make sure you're listening to your buyers. Make sure you're listening to their needs. And if they want that property, make sure that you're not overly protecting them, because we saw that a year ago. We saw agents who were, oh my gosh, I'm not going to let my client buy that. Well, now it's worth 30-40% more than what it was at that time. And so, again, it comes from a good place, but be careful.
Absolutely. And also remember, you can answer the majority of the questions that you have about a property after you've written a contract. That's what contingencies are for. Keep it clean, but people are, people are able to do their due diligence after they've written a contract in most cases. So it's not uncommon, like Jason said, for people today to buy things sight unseen. It happens every day.
Well, this has been tons of amazing advice. I know I'm like sitting here wrapping my head around all of these notes that I'm mentally taking, but I have one last question for you. Is there any other advice or tips related to getting to the finish line for buyers or sellers?
Gosh, good question. I would say it really does. It goes back to those expectations. It goes back to communicating, making sure that if you are feeling frustrated as an agent or a buyer or a seller, make sure that you're communicating that. Make sure that you're making sure that you're remembering why you're selling or why you're buying. Sometimes we lose sight of the fact of why we're doing this in the first place. Most of us have a reason that we're buying, and so if we can remember why we're doing it, or if we can remember why we're selling it, maybe it's to get to the grandkids in Nebraska, or maybe it's to buy a different home. Whatever it is, remembering our why is always a good place.
I love that. Play nice in negotiations. That applies to buyers, sellers, agents, everyone. It doesn't get us anywhere to bully on. Today, we see more people lose opportunity than not, taking a overly aggressive approach. So play nice, be responsible, be personally responsible. All the timelines that happen after a contract is written, between contract and close, are really important. It's some are really important to seller, some are really important to buyer. Be cognizant of the timelines you set and stick with them. Agents, make sure that you're on top of those timelines. So those are the biggest things I can think of.
Well, I appreciate you guys. And Grow, Thrive, Inspire listeners, we could not be more thankful to Jeff and Jason for joining us today and getting us to the finish line. Remember that if you feel like you're in a pinch with selling or buying, give us a call and we will try to help you right away. We have one more episode of the season coming, so be sure to tune back in on Wednesdays and like and subscribe to our pages, or share us with those who love the lake area as much as you do. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Spotify, and iTunes, or growthriveinspirepodcast.com. Even though we may be concluding Season 2 and working on Season 3, we will still keep our open houses going, so be sure to check out our open houses coming up. They're posted on Thursdays for the upcoming weekend on our Facebook page. And remember to always grow, thrive, and inspire, and we'll catch you next time.